Gold in Miami, Florida, Sherry Davis in Los Angeles, Brandon Collins in New York, Derek Dunn in Washington, D.C., Jill Monroe in Los Angeles, and Dana Abercrombie, also in New York, with Sam Leggett, Washington, D.C., and Philippe Patterson, who is in North Carolina. I'm going to let you guys do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side. Lupita, we got a full house for you today.
Thank you.
Hello, hello. Najir Chambers from Big Gold Belt Media. Lupitas, thank you so much for your time today. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. This may be a little bit of a controversial question, but after spending some time in New York, and of course your world traveled, what would you consider the best pizza in all you've had?
You know what? I have to disappoint you so badly because I'm gluten-free and dairy-free. So pizzas are not things I eat very often at all. I am totally clueless.
No worries, no worries. And obviously, this question is tailored about the movie because with Samira's big motivation to get back to Harlem to get that pizza, I'm just wondering now if the Death Angels were to invade Earth tomorrow, what would you choose as your final meal?
Oh, French fries. I love good French fries.
Can't go wrong there. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
Hi, Lupita. Kim Singleton, Consider It Blacklit podcast and television show out of New York. Love the movie. And besides it being a sci-fi thriller, I really love the development of the characters. And I really identified with your character, Samira, as an African-American artist. The way that you referred to Harlem as home, how you embraced the Octavia Butler book and you smell the pages, your appreciation for jazz, as well as listening to Nina Simone in your headphones. So I identified with all of that. My question is that something that was already in the script when you came to the project, or was it added just to give your character a little more depth?
Those things existed. Well, most of that was in the script. Most of it was in the script. I have to admit, she was always a poet, an artist, and loved jazz. That was in the script. I think the one thing that I may have brought to it was that Octavia Butler book, because I had been reading Octavia Butler, and I just thought that the Lilith's Brood was a particularly poignant, related story to the one that we were telling. It's kind of like it's kind of like the opposite. The aliens in that come to kind of save humanity from themselves. So I thought it would just be a poetic point to make. And Michael really loved it, and so he put it in there. But yeah, I think this story, she is of the world she's from, and these are just the touch points that came naturally to the top.
Thank you. I happen to love Octavia Butler, so I was really excited when I saw that small little snippet. So thank you. Great job.
Hi, Lupita. My name is Ruben Peralta from Cocalega Sarneta. I live in Miami.
Oh, hi.
Hi. This is a successful two movies before, and I wonder what was that conversation that dragged you to the project, and if there was a conversation that they wanted to create something different than these two movies, and being this one a prequel, but they wanted to keep the essence of the success of the first two.
Yeah, that was exactly the conversation. The first person I spoke to was John Krasinski, and we had a Zoom in which he told me that they were going to be making a prequel. And he said to me that, the only reason to continue to make movies in this universe was if he could find a new voice and a new way of telling a story. He wanted to add to the universe, but also to the genre of horror and thriller to kind of expand what that genre can encompass. And so by handing the baton to Michael Sarnowski, that's the first step to find a new way in, a new story to tell. And what Michael did was take this story to, following a whole new host of characters, that's breathing fresh air into the universe. And, the universe can encompass so much because a catastrophe like this affects everybody, right?
Yeah.
And so we get to follow Samira and Eric in this particular movie, and we get to come to New York. That's a way bigger scope.
Mhm.
The Abbott family was in the middle of nowhere, so that's a more contained environment. But now you're in New York, one of the busiest, most bustling and loud cities in the world. How on earth are they going to deal with a thing like this? How do you make New York quiet? I thought that was a very compelling question to ask.
I agree. Thank you so much for your time and congratulations. I love the film.
Thank you.
I loved you in the film, Lupita. I was so excited to see someone that looked like me leading a horror film. And I love the connection that you made with Henry, Eric, and of course, Frodo the cat. Which was your moment that you connected to most filming?
Ooh. The moment that I loved, what I love about this movie is that, yes, there is the scope and the scale, and there's the scares, and there's that large adventure, and then there's just the tenderness of two people trying to navigate the world together. I really, really love that juxtaposition, those contrasts. And for me, my favorite moments were those quieter moments where we had to I loved how carefully you had to do everything because sound is the enemy. We were so present in small things. You can't just have a conversation, You have to negotiate in silence. And I loved the care that brought to every scene. And without spoiling it, there's a moment at the end of the film between Sam and Eric, where she kind of achieves her mission of getting pizza. And I thought that moment was really beautiful and tender.
I love the moment you had with Henry, the Black connection where a man was holding your mouth for a moment. And it conveyed so much with your eyes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Lupita, Brandon Collison, Video and Popcorn Podcast. Apologies for the background noise. I am in New York City at the cafe.
Hey.
Yeah, you know how it is.
Yeah.
This is an incredibly taxing role for a lot of your dramatic work, especially in the horror genre. What is your process for decompressing after what I imagine are emotionally draining and long days on set?
I'm gonna need you to repeat because there was some reverb of some kind, so I didn't hear your question.
Sorry. I'm curious about what's your process for decompressing after incredibly emotionally draining and long days on set.
Well, for this one, I took a lot of Epsom salt baths because my body was going through it. I had to go through a physical transformation, losing a whole bunch of weight to play Samira. And so I would go home and run myself a bath, pour tons of Epsom salt, and just lay there for a good 30 minutes to decompress and wash away the work of the day. It was also a very dusty film, so I was often covered in dust and really did need that bath.
Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you.
Hi, Lupita, Derek Dunn, Reviews and Done. My question was, this is your third foray into the horror genre. Growing up, what was your favorite horror film?
Man, I don't know whether I can call it my favorite horror film, but because I watched it way too young and I watched it way too many times. Maybe that's why I like horror films and I want to be in them to try and work through the trauma. It was Poltergeist. I watched that film very many times because I had an older sibling, older cousins that subjected me to watching it, and it scared the bejesus out of me. And somehow I just kept watching it until one day I realized I don't have to do this. But by then I had the bug and I wanted to be in horror films.
Thank you.
Jill Monroe, RSVP with Jill Monroe. Lupita, you mentioned that Samira is an artist. We know that that's a very tactile as far as the world that she lives in. So when she's going through this transformation, losing that aspect of her, how do you think it impacts the character that we get to see play out throughout the film?
Well, when we meet Samira, she is in a very kind of resigned headspace, given what life has dealt her. And so I think that's one of the things that makes her an intriguing character to follow. She's kind of like the every woman. There's nothing heroic about her, and she certainly doesn't see herself as heroic at all. If anything, she's trying to distance herself from everything she knows, all the connections, from the identity that she lived her life with. So we see her and in a moment where this there's enough calamity in her life, and then now there's even more, and she deals with it in a very, very surprising way.
Hi, Dana Abercrombie, The Koalition. I loved absolutely everything about this movie, but I wanted to talk about your interpretation of the script by using your body language, because you can't use your voice. Can you talk about the process of showing both the emotions on the surface and what lies below? Because there's certain things you want to say, but you can't.
Well, yeah, this was a unique acting challenge, right? When they strip away the language. But it was also kind of liberating because when I'm working on a movie with more dialogue, I'm always looking for what's being said between the lines because that as people, we're always saying more than our words reveal. So when that's taken away, then it becomes a lot more just like pure and primal and intuitive. It's its own special kind of challenge, but what it takes is really you have to be in the moment with your scene partner. You can't really prepare because you don't know what they're going to be saying through their facial expression and their body language. So it takes an immediacy. There's an immediacy and spontaneity to the work on a daily basis that was very exciting.
Hello, Lupita. This is Samuel Leggett with JVS Media and Productions. Throughout the course of this movie, there was a lot of moving parts, literally and figuratively. And the biggest thing about it seemed like it had to be very hard for you to act with absolutely nothing really truly there, this terrifying threat. So I wanted to get your perspective on what was harder, acting against really nothing or being in the quietness through scene to scene.
I think what was hardest was doing both at the same time. Because we're running away from monsters. And in the shooting of them, there are no monsters. There's people in blue outfits on stilts. There's sometimes a green dot or a cross, or your director making really silly monster sounds in a mic. So there were lots of reasons and ways to break out of the intensity of the scene and laugh. There's definitely lots of outtakes of us laughing because it was so ridiculous. And then to do all of that, to keep the intensity of what is happening for these characters and to these characters and remain silent at the same time with a crew that is not being silent because they can't be silent. It was a lot to negotiate. But it was fun, it was a fun experience. I loved having to overcome those challenges. It's like a Rubik's Cube. You're like, oh, how are we going to get all these things together? Yeah, so it was definitely the combination.
Hey, Lupita, this is Philippe Patterson from Taji Mag. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So I'm going to do a little throwback here. So I watched a little short film called The Roadside. I don't know if you remember that. How would you compare the Sam's internal dialogue in A Quiet Place Day One with your character's dialogue in The Roadside?
Oh my goodness. Your question is, how would I compare the what and the what?
The internal dialogue of Sam in A Quiet Place and your character in The Roadside, because they were both kind of stranded,
Oh God,
And
yeah. I mean, the stakes for Sam are so much higher than the roadside, which, yeah, that is a blast from the past for sure. But yeah, I would say Sam is a whole lot more dire circumstances. It's life or death for her in a really visceral way. And yeah, she has to overcome a lot to make it through this day.
okay. Is there something that's similar between the two?
Not that I know of. Can you tell me what's the similar? I haven't thought about the roadside in a hot minute.
I know that's why I'll bring it up, but thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Lupita, what does this film, and obviously it's a part of an incredible uh, chain of films that the public has responded tremendously to. What does it say about humanity? What are your final thoughts about what type of things we should be really taking away from watching Quiet Place?
Well, I would hate to be prescriptive. I think we make these films and then they belong to the people that watch them. And I'm really looking forward to what people make of them and what meaning they derive from the films. But I would say that what struck me when I was reading it and when I was exploring it as the character Sam is we need each other, you know. Michael Sarnowski seems to be attracted to telling stories that are severe but tender at the heart of them. And he did that in his first film, Pig, with that independent film Pig with Nicolas Cage, and he's doing it again here. There's all the big scares and, you know, this odyssey that these characters have to go on. But at the heart of it, it's two strangers, perfect strangers, trying to navigate the world together. And I just remember thinking, like, wow, it's one thing to follow the Abbott family and understand why they need to stick together. It's another thing to root for two strangers to hold on to each other. And yeah, it's just a reminder that we need each other beyond tribal lines.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well said. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on another great performance. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, we appreciate you. We take joy in your work, your excellence in your craft, and thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for watching this edition of Africa Roundtables. Have a great day.
Take care.